Chapter 14. It ain't lonely at the bottom.
They say you hit the bottom. We knew you'd be back.
You seem to be in better spirits. Izuku hummed contentedly to himself as he took a spoonful of cookie dough and rolled it into a ball. He placed it on the baking sheet in front of him. I guess I'm feeling more myself, he said. He looked at his mother and smiled. It had been a few days since Izuku had been released from the NSICU. After he'd ended his conversation with Katsuki on that first day and allowed himself to process his emotions, he'd set his new camera on his bedside table, then immediately passed out. He'd woken up to the sight of the Nikken, which had prompted another round of tears. He'd cried again later when he'd gone back and read all of Katsuki's messages properly. Thinking about them even now made Izuku's heart flutter. Inko's eyes danced. I'm glad, she said. She picked up her mixing bowl and began to hum her own tune. Izuku plopped another lump of dough into his hands. It had been ages since he and his mother had baked together. Izuku remained largely bedridden, but he'd used the time to get to know his new camera. He'd discovered that some of the Nikken's features were identical to his last camera, and others were entirely new. Izuku couldn't wait to get back on his feet and try them out. Being bedridden also allowed Izuku an opportunity to think things over. It was true that his first attempt at photojournalism had been a disaster. He hadn't been ready for the dangers that the protest had presented. But Katsuki had encouraged Izuku and given him a second chance. He'd be damned if he let himself roll over and die. Izuku still had other avenues to explore. Attending newsworthy events had only been one of his ideas, after all. A new plan was already beginning to form in his mind. The protest. Monoma. Kendo. The anti-heroes. Katsuki. There was something in the midst of this world that resonated with Izuku deeply. He just had to figure out what it was. Izuku's phone vibrated on the kitchen counter. He glanced at the screen. Sold out of half our shirts. Izuku grinned. He picked up his phone with greasy hands. That's great. After a few minutes, another message appeared. How are you doing? Izuku's body tingled from head to toe. Izuku was trying his best not to read too deeply into Katsuki's actions. He didn't want to come off as any more eager than he already had. Holding back, however, was becoming increasingly difficult as Katsuki continued to message him. What are you smiling about? Inko asked. She approached Izuku and touched his shoulder. Izuku startled. He set his phone face down on the counter, his cheeks flushing. Not nothing, he stammered. Nothing, is it? Inko replied teasingly. Izuku said. His face burned. Inko's mouth twitched. She turned away. Well, I hope nothing knows how much you appreciate your new camera. And I hope you'll bring nothing over for dinner sometime. Oh, God, Izuku moaned. He covered his face with his hands. Izuku hadn't told his mother the full story, but she'd always been a clever woman. He'd admitted that the camera had been sent from a friend who had refused to let him return it. He wasn't sure how much she'd figured out beyond that. When you're ready, Inko said. Izuku lowered his hands and nodded slowly, unable to meet his mother's eyes. Inko bumped her hip against Izuku's leg gently. Let's get these in the oven, she said, gesturing towards the full baking sheet. Yeah, Izuku said. He smiled uncertainly. As Inko put the tray in the oven, Izuku chewed on his lower lip. He'd tell her. Soon. Izuku raised his mother's hand mirror and turned away from the bathroom vanity. He angled the mirror until it reflected the back of his head. Izuku could see the small pinpricks left behind by the staples that had been removed earlier that day. An angry pink scar roughly 2 inches in length divided the marks. Izuku ran his finger over the bumpy tissue and grimaced. He knew that the scar would fade, but it wasn't exactly pleasant to look at or easy to hide. His hair was already growing back, but it would be another week or two before the mark was obscured. Izuku sighed. Once the scar was concealed, there would still be a patch of hair on his head that was shorter than the rest. There was no way around it. He was going to need a haircut. Izuku's follow-up appointment at the hospital had gone well. His coordination was rapidly improving. As long as he limited his screen time, his dizziness remained manageable. He'd been given a referral to a physiotherapist for his neck and shoulder. The most severe side effect that Izuku had to cope with was the debilitating headaches that came and went with little to no warning. Izuku set the hand mirror aside and grabbed his toiletries from the bathroom counter. He returned to his bedroom and sat down next to his overnight bag. He packed his toiletries and closed the duffel. Izuku looked around his old bedroom. All Might's ever supportive, beaming smile could be seen from nearly every angle. The corners of Izuku's mouth curved upward. He wondered if Monomo would return his email. Izuku stood slowly. He grabbed his duffel by the handle and hobbled to the front door. He set the bag down with a grunt. "Izuku!" Inko called out. She appeared by the kitchen entrance. "You're ready?" "Yeah," Izuku said. Inko wrung her hands. "Are you sure you want to go back?" she asked. "You've only been here a weekend." "Mom," Izuku said. He approached Inko and took her hands in his. "It's going to be all right. I can get around on my own and I've got friends nearby. Besides, the hospital cleared me." "I know." Inko sighed. "I just worry." She squeezed Izuku's hands. "Promise me you'll call if you need anything." "I promise," Izuku reassured her. "And that you won't push yourself too hard." "Mom." Izuku released Inko's hands and hugged her carefully. Inko returned the hug. She rubbed her eye. "Well, I can't let my son go home empty-handed." Inko bustled away only to return moments later with several bags stuffed with groceries. "You're in no condition to go shopping," she said. "This should keep you properly fed for a while." Izuku smiled sheepishly. "Thanks Mom," he said. Inko set the bags on the floor. She raised her hand and stroked her son's cheek. "Let's get you settled." "Thanks for coming out with me," Izuku said. Momo smiled. "Not at all," she replied. She took a deep breath and rubbed her gloved hands together. "I don't get out enough in the winter. The fresh air will do us both some good." Izuku and Momo strolled down the sidewalk of a residential street. It was late afternoon and the sun already hung low in the sky. "Your dessert crepes last night were delicious," Izuku said conversationally. Momo flushed. "I'm glad you liked them," she said. "I think my homemade jelly filling paired nicely with the lavender Darjeeling tea. Maybe next time I'll dash." Momo stopped. She laughed self-consciously. "Thank you for visiting." "I should be thanking you," Izuku replied cheerfully. Momo was undeniably cute, not unlike Okako. It was easy to see why Shoto liked her. Izuku had spent some time thinking things through and had decided to speak with Okako when he returned to work. She deserved a face-to-face conversation at the very least. A frosty breeze sent a shiver down Izuku's spine. He tugged his wool hat over his ears and adjusted his sunglasses. When he'd gone outside earlier that week, the light had overwhelmed his sensitive eyes and he'd ended up having to spend the rest of the day in bed. Since then he'd learned to only venture outside during the later half of the day, for brief periods of time, and with a pair of sunglasses and a friend. "How's your new camera?" Momo asked. Izuku's hands instinctively grasped the worn satchel that hung from his good shoulder. "It's great," he said. A telling smile formed on his lips. They turned onto a main street. Izuku examined the storefronts as they passed. "Here it is," he said when he spotted their destination. Momo looked at the store sign. "Photex Solutions," she murmured. "I think Shoto bought his camera from here." "It's a good shop," Izuku said. He'd visited it many times before to drool over the expensive cameras and lenses. "I might need your help reading some of the print." "Of course," Momo said. She smiled at Izuku. "That's what I'm here for." After the better part of an hour, Izuku exited the store with a sizable bag. Momo held a smaller bag of her own. It was snowing lightly. Izuku peered at his loot, a sturdy new camera tote, a small box, and a bulk pack of a half-dozen memory cards. He wasn't going to make the same mistake twice. Izuku may not have been able to afford a backup camera yet, but he could protect his photographs if he switched his memory card out regularly. That store has some beautiful photo frames, Momo commented. I should have come by sooner. They're great, Izuku agreed. He pulled the small box out of his bag and opened it eagerly. A camera lens lay nestled in its protective packaging. It may have been a rental, but it looked barely used. Do you mind if I attach this quickly? Izuku asked. I'd like to test it while we're still outside. Go ahead, Momo said. Let me know if you'd like to stop somewhere. It didn't take long for Izuku to snap the lens into his camera. They walked a little further down the street before Izuku paused at a frozen water fountain. How about here? Izuku asked. I could take a couple of winter portrait shots, if you don't mind. Momo reddened. Of me? She clenched her fists and averted her eyes. I don't know. I'm not ready. You look great, Izuku reassured her. If you don't like them, I'll delete them. I suppose, Momo said reluctantly. Izuku led Momo over to the fountain and positioned her appropriately. It was amazing how quickly his body fatigued after extended inactivity. He'd need to start heading back soon. Izuku raised his camera and took a short series of photographs. His shoulder began to protest almost immediately. When he was done, he showed Momo the images. Oh wow, Momo breathed. Her eyes sparkled. These are wonderful. Izuku frowned. He was glad that Momo liked the photographs, but he could only see the blurred edges caused by his imperfect coordination. He was pretty sure that his old college tripod was buried somewhere in his apartment. He ought to dig it up. Thanks, Izuku said. Would you mind sending this one to me? Momo asked. She pointed at the screen. I could use some nice pictures for my new frames. I'd be happy to, Izuku said. He took another look at the photograph on his camera's display. Next time he'd do better. Got your record deal, IA? Shut up. I'm working on it. Taken any decent photos yet? Izuku smirked. Shut up. I'm working on it. Izuku shoved his phone into his coat pocket. Behind him, the subway car doors pinged and shut. He exited the platform and headed to the nearest stairs. Izuku took the steps one at a time. He was glad that his earlier dizzy spell had cleared up. He couldn't risk blowing today. Once Izuku had reached the sidewalk, he looked at his phone again. Big show tonight. Venue's almost at capacity. Although they had been texting for nearly 2 weeks, Izuku's heart never failed to skip a beat when his phone vibrated and Katsuki's name appeared. Their conversations were brief, but they never failed to cheer Izuku up. They gave him something else to think about while he lay in bed with a pillow over his head to block out any traces of sunlight. Awesome. You guys gonna blow the roof off? F yet. Izuku grinned. He began to walk. As the building that he was searching for came into view, Izuku's stomach clenched. He took a deep breath, then entered the establishment. You can do this, he thought. Izuku took off his sunglasses and approached the front desk. An older woman was seated behind a tall glass panel with a narrow opening at the bottom. Her expression was intimidating. Hello, Izuku said. He hoped that he didn't look as nervous as he felt. I'm here for a visitation. I'm a photojournalist. My name is Midoriya Izuku. I spoke with the warden. The woman eyed Izuku. Sign in, then sit down, she said. She slid a chained clipboard through the opening. Izuku did as he was told. The woman picked up her phone. Izuku twiddled his thumbs anxiously while he waited. He hadn't expected much when he'd emailed Monoma more than a week ago. Kenda's reply had both surprised and delighted him. Kendo had been amazing. She'd run Izuku's request by Monoma and had helped Izuku figure out how best to approach the detention center. He wouldn't have made it this far without her. Eventually Izuku was escorted inside by 2 officers. He was taken into a private room and questioned while the contents of his new camera bag were examined. He almost had a heart attack when one of the officers grabbed his camera and flipped it upside down. After a thorough pat-down, Izuku was cleared. He left his phone, belt, and other personal belongings in a locker and was led into a separate room. Monoma was sitting at a plain table. A second chair had been placed across from him. He was dressed in a grey shirt and pants. His hair was mussed. A security guard stood nearby. "Took you long enough," he said. Izuku bowed as best he could. "I owe you an apology," he said. "I'm sure that Kendo told you everything." Monoma's expression remained impassive. Izuku stiffly seated himself. The chair did not budge. "I'm going to do better," he said. "You're going to do better," Monoma drawled. "Didn't you lose everything? I'm not sure how you could improve on that." Izuku persisted. "I don't want all of this to have been for nothing," he said. One of the officers left the room. The other approached the security guard. She muttered something into his ear. Monoma's eyes narrowed. "What did you have in mind?" Izuku looked at the officer and guard apprehensively. He chose his next words carefully. "A wide-scope project," he said. "I want to document social change happening within the city. I'd like to include a written piece and, ideally, have it published." "Interesting," Monoma murmured. "Will you help me?" Izuku asked. "I can't do it without you." Monoma smirked. "You can't do it without me," he repeated. "I like the sound of that." Izuku grinned. He was glad that imprisonment hadn't done much to dampen Monoma's spirits. "Is it alright if I ask you some questions and take a few photographs?" Monoma eyed the officer and guard distastefully. "I might not be able to answer everything," he said. "For obvious reasons." He batted his eyelashes at them. "Watch yourself," the guard grunted. "That's okay," Izuku said. He set his camera bag on the table. He pulled out a small recording device and a pocket notebook. "I can get specifics from Kendo later. Why don't we focus on ideology?" Monoma's smirk widened. "I can do that," he said. Izuku beamed. He placed the recording device on the table and turned it on. "Let's begin," he said. "That's a nasty scar you've got there." Izuku grimaced. "I know," he said. "The hospital had to shave my head." The hairstylist rearranged Izuku's curls experimentally. A plethora of tattoos adorned the man's arm from wrist to shoulder. "There's not much we can do about that unless you're looking for something more extreme," he said. Izuku had an idea or two. "What if we just shaved everything across the bottom?" Izuku asked. The hairstylist raised his eyebrows. "You sure that's what you want?" he asked. "It'll be short, even for an undercut." Izuku nodded. "It's time for a change. Besides, hair grows back." The hairstylist chuckled. "That it does," he said. He slapped Izuku's shoulder cheerfully. Izuku sucked in a breath. "You'll rock it. You have the right hair for it." The hairstylist swiveled Izuku back towards the salon mirror. "Let's fade it out at the bottom and leave it thicker towards the top." He positioned his index fingers over the tops of Izuku's ears. "I'm thinking we'll start around here. Sound good?" Izuku studied his reflection. He couldn't remember the last time he'd had a proper haircut. It would be a fresh start. He was ready. "Let's do it," Izuku said. Izuku wandered along a downtown city street, his satchel slung over his shoulder. His eyes roamed freely. Several inches of dirty snow lay on the ground. Izuku looked at it and smiled. It felt good to be out by himself. Izuku appreciated his friends, but he'd missed his independence. As Izuku's health improved, his brief excursions had turned into several-hour-long expeditions. He hadn't had a migraine in 4 days and his mobility was greatly improved. Izuku paused in front of an interesting abstract sculpture that had been installed next to a corporate office. He set his satchel on the ground and pulled out his old tripod. Izuku studied the sculpture contemplatively. He circled it until he found an angle that he liked. Izuku's photography had changed over the past couple of weeks. Instead of trying to force his subject, Izuku had been taking a more organic approach. Anything that caught his interest was fair game. As a result, his familiarity and skill with his new camera was rapidly increasing. A storm drain clogged with cigarette butts. An elderly woman waiting for the city bus. A broken window belonging to a convenience store. An abstract sculpture covered in frozen bird. Something caught the corner of Izuku's eye. A flash of short black hair and a long blonde ponytail sent him into a panic. Izuku stared openly at the distant figures until his brain registered that the person with the blonde ponytail was a male, and the man with the dark hair had no visible tattoos. Izuku closed his eyes and counted to 10. He let the anxiety ooze off of him. He needed to get past this. His friends wouldn't always be there to reassure him. The officers who had questioned Izuku at the hospital had told him that they'd be in touch should his attackers be apprehended. Izuku hadn't heard anything, so it was probably safe to assume that they hadn't been found. Izuku wasn't even sure if he wanted them to be caught. He just wanted to feel safe. Izuku ran a hand over the back of his head and sighed. The fuzzy sensation was strangely calming. Izuku turned his attention back to his work. He took a few more photographs, then packed up his equipment, hefting his satchel onto his good shoulder. His physiotherapy appointments were helping, but progress was slow. As he waited at a crosswalk, Izuku checked his phone for messages. He hadn't received any texts from Katsuki today. That meant it was his turn. "How was the show last night?" Katsuki replied promptly. "Murdered it, obviously. Setting up for our next." Izuku grinned. "Wish I was there. I miss watching you guys perform." Izuku tucked his phone back into his pocket. He crossed the road, then turned down a side street. He waited for something to catch his eye. When Izuku spotted a plethora of bright colors poking out from the side of a run-down restaurant, he made his move. Izuku approached the building curiously. Its side was covered in a two-story mural. The likeness of someone who Izuku was fairly certain was a famous author claimed the majority of the space. His face and upper torso had been spray-painted in elaborate detail. A hand rested on his chin, his middle finger splayed against his cheek. A quotation had been painted with calligraphic letters next to him over a sepia background. "Disobedience, in the eyes of anyone who has read history, is man's original virtue." It was more than graffiti. It was a work of art. Izuku got to work. He experimented with his camera, trying different angles and effects. By the time that Izuku was satisfied, he must have taken over 100 photos. As Izuku packed up his equipment, a voice called out to him. "I ought to charge admission." Izuku startled. He turned around. A grungy-looking woman in her early 30s leered at Izuku from the sidewalk. She was sitting on a sleeping bag that had been placed over a hot sidewalk grate. A cardboard sign was propped against her shins. Izuku approached the woman cautiously. "You made that?" he asked. He glanced back at the mural. "It's incredible. You're really talented." The woman laughed humorlessly. "Yeah, well," she said. "Talent only gets you so far these days." She jabbed her finger at the restaurant. "F's in there tried to have it removed for months. Every time they cleared a section, I'd come back overnight and patch it up." She snorted. "Eventually they gave up. Now people go into that S-hole just to compliment it. Bet it brings them a good chunk of change too. How's that for hypocrisy?" The gears in Izuku's head turned rapidly. "I'd love to hear more about it," he said. He rummaged through his satchel and pulled out his recording device. He showed it to her. "Would you mind if I asked you a few questions?" The woman looked at Izuku warily. "What's in it for me?" Izuku thought for a moment. "How about a hot meal?" he asked. "F that," the woman said. "How about a hard drink?" She raised her thumb to her mouth and mimed a bottle. Izuku shook his head. He wasn't going to indulge anyone's bad habits. "I'll buy you a hot drink and a meal," Izuku said. "That's my offer." The woman sneered at him. "You got 5 minutes," she said. Their conversation was brief, but Izuku managed to glean some pertinent details. He learned that the woman went by AI. She was a street artist who was responsible for a number of murals throughout the city. Her choice in subject matter revealed an innate intelligence. Izuku couldn't help but wonder what had forced her onto the street in the first place. When AI abruptly ended their conversation, Izuku thanked her for her time and went to fulfill his end of the bargain. She'd requested a local pizza chain. Izuku decisively ordered her an entire pie. While he waited, he checked his phone. More like you miss watching me, nerd. Izuku sucked his cheeks in. Katsuki wasn't entirely wrong, but he didn't have to phrase it like that. He deliberated his revenge. It's not my fault. You look good on stage. Izuku shoved his phone back into his pocket before he could embarrass himself any further. Several minutes later, Izuku returned to AI with the pizza. She grabbed the box out of his hands and shooed him away. Izuku didn't check his phone again until he was on the bus heading home. When he unlocked the screen, he choked on his saliva. I look better off. The comment was suggestive enough. The photograph was even more. Katsuki was wearing his onstage makeup. He sported his usual expression of mild displeasure. This, however, was less interesting than the fact that Katsuki was completely shirtless. Izuku reeled. Katsuki's defined pectorals and chiseled six-pack were better suited on a Roman statue than a human being. His Latin tattoo curved and dipped below his collarbones, drawing Izuku's eyes down and over his exposed stomach. Izuku cleared his throat and swallowed. His face felt unbearably hot. He glanced around the bus, but no one seemed to be paying him any mind. Izuku cupped his hand beside the screen. The longer that he stared at the photograph, the more inappropriate his thoughts became. Did Katsuki know what he'd done to him? Izuku sent a reply. You do. Izuku moaned quietly. He buried his face in his hands. That photograph was going to haunt him every night for the next month. Izuku wanted to reciprocate, but his location made that impossible. The fact that his side was still marked with ugly green and yellow bruises didn't help either. Izuku grumbled. He'd been going to the gym regularly before the protest, but his chest was nowhere near as impressive as Katsuki's. He resolved to return to his routine with renewed vigor as soon as he was able. The next time that Katsuki sent him a photograph, he'd make sure that he had something worth showing off. In the meantime, Izuku opened the camera application on his phone and reversed the view. I didn't tell you, but I had my hair cut the other day. Needed something new. Katsuki's response brought a smile to Izuku's face. Suits you. Click. Izuku stepped away from his camera. He examined the image on screen. Much better, he thought. Since Izuku had spoken with AI, he'd begun to notice street art everywhere. It had quickly become one of his favorite subjects to photograph. Pull your head out of your ass every once in a while and look at the city. Izuku chuckled quietly. He adjusted his tripod. The alley that Izuku was currently photographing was of particular interest. Both walls were covered in graffiti. Bold, distorted letters were interspersed with portraits and symbols. Colors clashed wildly, ranging from bright reds and yellows to greens and blues. Some of the words were illegible. Others were not. Resist. Not my culture. Izuku hummed thoughtfully. The late afternoon sun was beginning to cast long shadows on the pavement. Izuku smiled victoriously when his camera caught its rays at the perfect angle. Beams of light pierced the alley, brightening the graffiti in areas and obscuring it in others. He took a photograph. He had to show this to Katsuki. Izuku's smile wavered. He'd been keeping an eye on the anti-heroes' social media accounts for a while now. He'd enjoyed watching the fan-posted videos and reading Mina's status updates. The anti-heroes' online presence was undoubtedly growing. They'd had over 12,000 followers before their tour. When Izuku had checked the other day, they'd been pushing 15,000. Mina's posts were relentlessly cheerful. Yet something bothered Izuku. Izuku had made a point of not asking Katsuki about any record label interest since the day he'd visited Monoma. He knew that Katsuki wouldn't be the type to admit if things weren't going as well as he'd hoped. If the anti-heroes had gotten a deal, Mina would have blasted it all over social media. Izuku was sure that Katsuki would have told him too. The fact that the tour was nearly over and neither of them had mentioned it was concerning. Izuku sighed. He took a couple more photographs then called it a day. Izuku stopped by a cafe on his way home. He grabbed a hot drink and sat down at a private table. He rummaged through his photographs until he found the one he'd wanted to show Katsuki. He transferred it to his phone and sent it off. Izuku sipped his drink, enjoying the cafe's warmth. He closed his eyes for a moment. When his phone vibrated, he opened them. "You take that? Effing rad!" Izuku beamed. Why was it that compliments from Katsuki always seemed to mean so much more? "Thanks. I've been taking a lot of photographs lately." Katsuki responded quickly. "Don't overdo it, dumbass." Izuku whimpered. He pressed his palms into his eyes. His mouth twitched. "I'm not. Promise." Izuku chewed on his lower lip. Katsuki would be home soon. There was something he needed to say in person. "I have to thank you properly for the camera. When you get back." Katsuki's reply was slower this time. "Might not be for a while. Got a lot of stuff to unpack and figure out." It might not have been the most ideal response, but the fact that Katsuki hadn't denied Izuku outright gave him hope. He sent Katsuki one final message. "No problem. Let me know when you're free." Izuku put his phone away. He ought to start heading back. He'd been out for a long time and his head was beginning to ache. Izuku left the cafe and sought out the nearest bus stop. He wasn't very familiar with this part of the city. Most of the buildings were foreign to him. When he came across a storefront whose name rang a bell, he paused. "The Painted Lady." Izuku approached the window. A privacy screen had been set up near reception, obscuring much of his view. Izuku spotted a series of padded chairs, an elevated pair of feet, and someone holding a metal implement. The name clicked. Katsuki's Tattoo Parlor. Without thinking, Izuku went inside. The small desk at the front appeared to be abandoned. Izuku looked at the walls. A wide variety of paintings hung from the exposed brick. "Can I help you?" Izuku jumped. Had the petite woman sitting behind the desk been there all along? He collected himself. "I heard you have a gallery," he said. The woman looked at him and laughed. Her hair was aggressively red. "I guess you could call it a gallery," she said. She gestured over her shoulder. "Have a look if you want, but don't disturb our clients." "Thanks," Izuku said. Taking care not to linger, Izuku walked along the walls. The paintings here were unlike the typical artwork you'd find in a gallery. There were a lot of darker themes and more experimental approaches. Izuku stopped when he saw two familiar paintings hanging side by side. The first depicted a partially decayed skull. Thick streaks of red paint marred the foreground. Izuku peered at the label, Decaying Breath 3. The painting next to it also featured a skull, but instead of red streaks, thick gobs of purple paint splattered across the canvas. It looked even worse than Izuku remembered. Katsuki must have added his own touches. Izuku read the label, Decaying Breath V Feet Deku. "That artist is really popular," the red-haired woman said, popping up beside Izuku. The top of her head barely reached his shoulder. He brought in a series of 5 paintings. "These are the only 2 left." Izuku looked at the woman. He burst into laughter. The redhead appeared taken aback. "Wah! What the hell?" she spluttered. "Sorry," Izuku wheezed. He clutched his injured side. He looked at the label and began to laugh anew. He pointed shakily at the painting. I'm Deku." One of the tattoo artists approached the redhead. He jerked his head towards the entrance. The woman nodded. "Okay, weirdo," she said. "Time to go." Izuku waved goodbye cheerfully as he exited the parlor. Quiet laughter continued to escape Izuku as he waited for the bus. He couldn't believe that Katsuki had partially attributed the painting to him. His heart felt oddly full. Izuku reread their old conversations until the bus pulled up in front of him. They'd certainly have a lot to talk about the next time they saw each other. Izuku couldn't wait.